The Lonely Explorer. Jason Cole stepped out of his small landing ship and looked around. He was standing on the surface of Ilara, a planet full of glowing trees, soft winds, and colors that didn't exist on Earth. It was his first solo mission. No other humans were around. Just him and the unknown. Ilara was peaceful, or at least it looked that way. Birds with wings like shining glass flew overhead. The ground felt soft under his boots, and the air smelled like sweet fruit. Jason smiled. "It's beautiful," he whispered to himself, recording his voice into the log device on his wrist. Day 1. Planet Ilara. No sign of danger. He walked further into the forest, scanning plants and collecting samples. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Jason stopped. He felt something, like someone was watching him. He turned quickly, but saw nothing. "Just nerves," he muttered, shaking his head. Still, the feeling stayed with him. As he moved deeper into the woods, something caught his eye. A cluster of strange flowers grew near a rock. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. The petals were large and soft, glowing gently in the dim light. They looked almost alive. Jason knelt down, scanned them with his device, and smiled. No danger detected. Unknown species. He picked a few carefully, planning to study them back at his camp. Their scent was calming, almost like lavender but warmer. By the time he returned to his base camp, the twin moons were rising in the sky. He placed the flowers inside a glass container and made a meal. As he ate, he spoke into the log again. "Strange feeling today, like someone was nearby. No signs of life. But I think I'm not alone." That night, Jason couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about those flowers and the strange silence around him. Around midnight, he stepped out of his camp tent and looked at the stars. The forest was glowing softly, and a cool wind touched his face. Then he saw it. A shadow. It moved quickly between the trees, tall, slender, and glowing faintly, just like the flowers. Jason stood still, heart pounding. The figure paused, then vanished. He ran to the spot where it had been. Nothing. No tracks. No sound. Just silence. Jason returned to his tent, confused and a little scared. But deep inside, he was also curious. The next morning, something strange happened. When Jason stepped out of his tent, he saw something lying near the campfire. It was a small stone, smooth, white, and perfectly round. Beside it was a piece of cloth, soft, silver blue, and shining in the sunlight. It wasn't from his supplies. Jason picked it up slowly. It smelled faintly like the forest, and something else, something warm. It felt like a gift. "Someone's been here," he whispered. He scanned the area. Again, no signs, no footprints, but the gift was real. Later that day, Jason returned to the place where he had found the glowing flowers. He placed one of the flowers on the rock, gently. "Thank you," he said aloud, not knowing if anyone could hear. Then he waited. Hours passed. Nothing happened. He was about to leave when he heard a soft sound, like a song in the wind. He turned, and there she was. A tall figure stood at the edge of the trees. She wasn't human. Her skin glowed pale blue. Her hair flowed like silver threads. Her eyes were large and full of light. She didn't speak. She just stared at him. Jason froze. The flower still lay on the rock. Very slowly, he pointed to it and smiled. The alien woman stepped forward, eyes locked on his. She picked up the flower, held it close to her chest, and then something strange happened. She closed her eyes, and tears rolled down her cheeks. Jason's heart skipped a beat. "Wait, are you crying?" She nodded once, then turned around and ran into the forest, disappearing like mist. Jason stood alone, unable to speak. A single thought kept echoing in his mind. Why did a simple flower make her cry? That night, Jason couldn't sleep again. His mind was full of questions. Who was she? Why was she crying? Was she dangerous, or just lonely, like him? As he lay in his tent, the campfire flickering outside, he didn't notice the soft shadow that passed by his tent. But when he opened his eyes in the middle of the night, he saw her. She was inside his camp, holding the flower, whispering words into the air in a language he didn't understand. And before he could speak, she was gone. The flower gift. Jason Cole sat up quickly, his breath caught in his throat. The strange alien woman had just been inside his camp. But now, she was gone again. He looked around, heart pounding. The camp door was slightly open. The flower he had left on the rock yesterday was missing from its glass container, and something else was lying in its place. Another small object, smooth, pale white. Not a stone this time, but a shell. A rare, spiral-shaped shell with tiny symbols carved on the edge. He picked it up gently, turning it in his hand. Jason didn't understand what it meant, but something inside him whispered, "This is a message." A reply. He had given her a flower. She had given him a symbol. And more than that, she had come inside, quietly, without harm. And she had whispered something. Jason felt a strange warmth in his chest. Curiosity pulled at him like a string tied to his soul. He had to know more. Later that morning, Jason packed a small bag with water, emergency rations, and his portable translator. He took one of the glowing flowers with him. This time, not for research. This time, as a gift. He returned to the rock where he had first seen her. The forest was quiet again. Soft lights shimmered on the leaves. Jason placed the flower gently on the rock, then stepped back. "I'm sorry," he said aloud. "I didn't mean anything bad. I just wanted to show peace." Nothing happened for a long while. Jason waited and waited, until finally he sat down against a tree and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, she was standing in front of him. She hadn't made a sound. Jason stood slowly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. She didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the flower on the rock. Then she walked forward, graceful, silent, like a breeze that had learned how to walk. She picked up the flower. For a moment, she just stared at it. Her glowing fingers gently touched each petal, as if afraid they might break. Then she held it close to her chest again. This time, she didn't cry. She looked at Jason, her large silver eyes full of emotion, and said a single word. "Carol." The translator beeped softly but couldn't process the language. It blinked red. Unrecognized dialect. No match found. Jason frowned. "I don't understand," he said. "But thank you. For the shell. For last night. For not hurting me." The alien tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. She stepped forward. Slowly, carefully. Jason didn't move. She reached out and touched his wrist, the one with the translator, and pressed a finger against it. Then she touched her own neck, where a small crystal hung like a necklace. Jason pointed to it. "That helps you speak." She nodded once. He got an idea. Reaching into his bag, he pulled out a small scanner and gently pointed to her crystal. "Can I scan it? Just to understand." She looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded again. Jason's device scanned the crystal for several minutes. As data flowed in, something surprising happened. The translator began to update. Words and meanings started forming, slowly but clearly. Jason stared at the screen in awe. This crystal wasn't just decoration. It was a language keeper, a living memory stone. It held pieces of her people's voice, maybe even their entire history. When the translator beeped green, Jason tried again. "Can you understand me?" The woman looked at him, and this time, when she spoke, the translator gave a response. "You gave me a vow." Jason blinked. "A vow." She nodded slowly. "The flower. You gave it to me. That means something deep." Jason raised his hands. "I didn't know. I'm sorry. On my world, flowers are gifts. For peace or kindness. She stared at him with wide eyes. Here, it is more. A sacred bond. A promise of heart. Of forever. Jason's breath caught. Oh no, he whispered. I didn't mean to. I didn't know. The woman's face softened. Her lips curved into something like a smile. I know, but your heart was honest. That matters. She sat on the rock beside the flower and placed the shell between them. Jason sat too, carefully. He felt like a student in a strange, beautiful school, where every glance, every silence, meant something big. They talked for a while. Slowly, through the translator, she told him her name was Ailari. She was one of the last of her kind. Her people had once filled the forests of Ilara, living in harmony with the planet's energy and life. But one day, off-world raiders came, seeking the glowing crystals that grew in Illyrian's bones. They were hunted, captured, sold. Most were killed. Only a few escaped. Ailari was one of them. She had been alone for years, watching from the shadows, hoping her people's traditions would not be forgotten. When Jason gave her the flower, she thought, for a moment, that maybe the traditions could live again. Jason listened with quiet respect. His heart hurt for her. He hadn't come to this planet to fall into someone else's ancient culture. But now he felt part of it, somehow chosen. Then Ailari stood and said something unexpected. They are coming back. Jason looked up sharply. Who? The ones who killed us. The Skyburners. I saw their ships 3 nights ago. Jason's hand clenched around his scanner. That's not possible. My sensors didn't pick up anything. They hide now, but they are near, looking for more stones, more lives. Jason felt the air go cold. He had no backup, no weapons strong enough to fight off raiders, and now he wasn't just protecting himself. He had found someone who needed him. Maybe they needed each other. Ailari turned to him, her glowing eyes intense. You gave me a vow. I now give you mine. She placed her crystal necklace in his hand. Jason looked at it, then at her. Something had changed. This wasn't just a meeting between two beings from different worlds. This was the start of something much bigger. The forgotten promise. Jason Cole sat beside the ancient rock, Ailari's crystal necklace resting in his palm. It was warm, alive almost, as if it carried not just light, but memory. He looked up at her, his voice soft. Why give this to me? Ailari stepped forward slowly. Her silver eyes reflected the twin suns rising behind the trees. Because the vow goes both ways, she said through the translator. When you gave the flower, you lit a bond between us, even if you didn't know. Jason stared at the crystal again. But I didn't mean to promise anything. Ailari smiled gently. Not all promises come from knowing. Some come from the heart. Her words stayed with him like a quiet echo. Later that evening, Ailari led Jason deep into the forest. They passed trees that shimmered with blue sap and roots that hummed with energy. The air became thicker, ancient. Jason felt as if the forest itself was watching them, listening. They stopped at a clearing where a stone circle stood, half covered in vines and moss. This place, Ailari said, was once where vows were made, where hearts spoke through silence. Jason looked around. The circle gave him chills, not from fear, but from something older than fear, something sacred. Do you want to perform the vow again? He asked, trying to understand. Ailari shook her head. No, it was already done, but there is something else I must show you. She knelt in the center of the circle and placed her hands on the ground. The earth glowed faintly beneath her fingers. Then, a compartment opened in the stone floor. Inside was a small box. She lifted it gently and opened the lid. Inside was a second crystal, dull, cracked, and lifeless. Jason looked at it, confused. This belonged to my brother, she said quietly. He gave his vow to protect our people, but he was betrayed. Jason noticed her hands shaking. What happened to him? Alari's eyes darkened. He was captured by the Skyburners and sold for 1 credit. Jason's stomach turned. 1 credit, he repeated. That's nothing. Alari nodded. That is what they thought we were worth. Jason sat beside her. He didn't know what to say. No human words felt right in that moment. But Alari didn't need words. She placed the broken crystal in his hand and said, "Now you understand why your flower meant more than you knew. You treated me like a person, not a product." Suddenly, Jason's wrist device beeped. A new signal. He tapped it. Unidentified ship detected, orbiting at 40,000 feet. No response to hails. His heart sank. It's them, isn't it? Alari's voice was cold now. Yes, the ones who hunt what they cannot understand. Jason stood quickly. We need to prepare. We can't let them find this place. Alari stared at him, her face unreadable. Then she whispered something into her crystal. It glowed briefly. I've already called something older than them. Something they fear. Jason looked at her. What did you call? The Guardian. That night, Jason couldn't sleep again. He sat near the fire while Alari rested, watching the stars for signs of the ship. He thought about Earth, about how he had come here for science, for exploration, for learning. But now, he was a part of something else. Something ancient, something broken, and maybe something worth saving. He looked at the crystal again, turning it slowly in his fingers. He remembered something his grandmother once told him. The most powerful promises are the ones you don't even know you made, until you're tested. The next morning, Alari was already awake. She stood at the edge of the clearing, staring up at the sky. Jason joined her. Do you think they've landed yet? She nodded. They come in silence, always in silence. Jason tightened his grip on the scanner. We need to move. But Alari shook her head. No, we don't run. Not this time. Jason looked at her, surprised. You want to fight. I want them to remember what they try to erase. She turned and walked toward the ruins. Jason followed. Inside the stone ruins was a large round chamber. Symbols carved deep into the walls pulsed with energy. In the center was a pedestal covered in dust. Alari placed the 2 crystals, hers and her brother's, on the pedestal. The ground trembled slightly. Jason stepped back. Alari raised her hands and spoke in her ancient tongue. The translator struggled to keep up, but Jason heard pieces. By bond and blood, by pain and promise, we awaken the Guardian. The chamber pulsed with light. A slow, rising hum filled the air. The walls glowed brighter, and from the pedestal, a 3rd crystal rose, larger than the others. It hovered in the air, spinning slowly. Jason watched in awe as a shape began to form around it. An armor of light, like a giant spirit with no face, but with presence. The Guardian. Alari fell to her knees, exhausted. Jason rushed to her side. You okay? She nodded weakly. The Guardian is awake, but it listens only to the one who gave the vow. Jason looked at her, confused. Me? Yes, she whispered. You brought the flower. You carry the promise now. Jason swallowed hard. Suddenly, an alert buzzed on his device. Ship landing detected. 3 miles west. Armed. They were here. Jason looked at the Guardian, then at Alari. He had come here as an explorer. Now, he was something else. A protector. A keeper of a forgotten promise. He stood tall, facing the Guardian. I don't know your language, he said. I don't know your laws. But I will stand. I will not let them take her, or this place. The Guardian glowed brighter. And for the first time, Jason heard a voice, not from outside, but inside his mind. Then rise, Jason of Earth. The vow is accepted. The enemy returns. The Guardian stood motionless, hovering in the center of the ancient ruin. Its crystal core pulsed with slow, steady light, as if listening to the heartbeat of the planet. Jason stood before it, feeling small, and yet not afraid. He had just accepted a vow, a sacred bond between himself and Ilari's forgotten people. And now he wasn't just a visitor on Ilara. He was part of its story. He turned to Ilari, who was still sitting on the stone floor. She looked tired, but her eyes held something new. Hope. Far away, engines hummed in the sky. Dark clouds began forming near the western hills, where the enemy ship was descending. Jason's scanner confirmed it. Landing complete. Life forms detected. Armed. Human signature, 80%. Unknown tech detected. Jason narrowed his eyes. Humans. Ilari nodded weakly. Not like you. Traders. Hunters. They took from us and called it profit. Jason clenched his fists. It made him sick to think his own kind had done this. Sold lives for fuel, bones for credits, memories for nothing. And now, they were back. He helped Ilari to her feet. We need to move fast. Can the Guardian fight? Yes, she said softly. But it only defends. It does not chase. It protects what remains. Jason fought for a moment. Then we don't run. We bring them to us. Ilari looked at him, surprised. You would risk yourself. He nodded. You said I made a vow. Then I need to stand by it. For a moment, Ilari didn't speak. Then she reached out and touched his hand. Then you are one of us now. They left the ruins together. Jason activated his beacon, sending out a pulse toward the intruders. It would act like a light in the dark, luring them closer. He set traps along the way. Small distractions using leftover tech from his ship. Static flares, magnetic pulses, heat beacons. He didn't want to fight. But if it came to one, he wouldn't hide. Ilari moved quietly beside him, her body glowing gently in the dimming light. The forest seemed to protect her. Branches moving out of her way, leaves brushing against her as if greeting an old friend. Jason watched her and wondered how much pain she carried inside. Yet she stood tall. She was stronger than anyone he had ever met. Suddenly, a loud hum echoed across the forest. Jason looked up. A black ship had broken through the clouds. Its shape was sharp, like a blade cutting through the sky. It landed in the clearing with a loud hiss of steam. Jason's scanner buzzed. Warning: high-energy weapons detected. 3 humanoid signatures. Unknown biological reading. Unstable. He stepped in front of Ilari. Stay behind me. She didn't argue. From the ship's ramp, 3 figures stepped out. 2 men in dark armor, carrying rifles shaped like lightning rods, and 1 woman, tall, scared, wearing a glowing helmet. Her voice came through the air in a cold mechanical tone. This world is unregistered. You are trespassing. Jason stepped forward. I'm here on a peaceful mission. This is Ilara. It belongs to her people. The woman laughed, her voice filled with cruelty. Asterisk, asterisk, her people. There are no people left here, only prophets. Jason's jaw tightened. You're not taking anything. The woman's helmet hissed open, revealing a pale face with sharp eyes. And you think you can stop us, human? Jason held up the crystal Ilari had given him. No, he said, but Ilara can. The forest shifted. The wind stopped, and from the trees, the Guardian emerged. Silent, glowing, massive. The raiders turned instantly, weapons raised. The 2 men fired, white beams of energy shooting toward the Guardian. But the light struck its invisible shield and vanished. The Guardian lifted 1 arm. The ground cracked, and a shockwave blasted out, sending the raiders tumbling like leaves in a storm. Jason turned to Ilari. Now. She stepped forward, her voice rising in the ancient tongue. The crystal on her chest pulsed. The ground around them began to glow, markings appearing in circles beneath their feet. You cannot steal life without price, she said. The woman raider rose slowly, her armor sparking. You want to protect this dead world, then die with it. She fired at Jason. Time slowed. Jason didn't move, but the Guardian did. It stepped between them, absorbing the blast with its chest. Then, with a slow motion, it raised its hand and pointed at the woman. A beam of golden light struck her weapon and melted it. The other two raiders ran, but not far. The trees themselves moved, branches wrapped around their legs, pulling them down. The forest had chosen its side. When the battle was over, the raiders lay defeated, alive, but powerless. Jason stood in the middle of the clearing, his heart racing, hands shaking. He had never felt such danger before, and never such purpose. Ilari stepped beside him. You didn't run. He nodded. I couldn't. She reached up and gently placed her hand over his heart. Then the vow was complete. The Guardian returned to the ruins, fading into the light once more, its duty done. Jason looked up at the sky, where stars were beginning to show. This world had nearly been erased. But tonight, it had fought back. Not with guns, not with hate, but with memory, with love, with a flower. Later, as they walked back to the camp, Jason asked quietly, "What happens now?" Ilari smiled softly. "Now, we remember. Power of the bond." The stars above Ilara shimmered quietly. Jason and Ilari walked through the forest in silence, their steps soft on the glowing moss beneath them. The battle was over, but its echo still rang in Jason's mind. He had never been in a real fight before, not like that. And yet, something inside him had shifted. Not from fear, but from understanding. He wasn't just protecting a person anymore. He was protecting a memory, a history, a heartbeat that the universe had tried to forget. Back at the camp, Jason sat near the fire while Ilari placed her hands on a crystal necklace he now wore. She had given it to him, but tonight, it began to glow brighter, without any touch. The light pulsed like a second heartbeat, in rhythm with Jason's own. Ilari watched closely. The bond is waking up. Jason looked at her. What does that mean? She pointed to the crystal. Your mind and mine. They are learning each other. That's what the vow truly does. Jason blinked. So, we can talk without speaking. Ilari nodded slowly. Soon. Not just words. Feelings. Memories. Even pain. Jason stared at the glowing crystal. That sounds powerful. It is. She paused, then added, it's also dangerous. That night, as Jason slept, he dreamed of things he didn't understand. He saw places he had never been. Tall white towers made of light, oceans that moved like music, skies filled with silver birds. He saw a little girl running through glowing fields. Her laugh was soft, sweet, and familiar. He woke up suddenly, breathing hard. The dream had felt real. He stepped outside and found Ilari already awake, standing under a tree, staring at the sky. I saw something, Jason said. In my sleep. A city. A girl. Ilari turned, surprised. You saw my memory. Jason's eyes widened. That was you. She nodded. The bond is stronger now. You are beginning to feel what I feel. Jason swallowed. So you can see my memories too. If I choose to. But I won't without your permission. Jason felt something deep inside stir. Trust, wrapped in something more gentle than words. He took a step closer. I want you to. If it helps us stay connected. Ilari looked at him. Then she reached out and placed her hand over his heart again. Then open your mind, and I will show you what Ilara once was. The moment her palm touched him, Jason felt the world change. Colors around them faded. The trees disappeared. And they were standing in a city of light. Towering crystal buildings hummed softly as energy moved through them like rivers. The sky was painted in gentle gold and blue. People, Ilarians, walked peacefully through floating paths, their bodies glowing like soft lanterns. Jason turned slowly, breath caught in his throat. "This is beautiful." This was Ilara, Alari said, before the Skyburners came. He saw her younger self, playing by a water garden with her brother. They laughed and threw petals into the air. The moment was full of peace. But then the sky darkened. A ship arrived, large and loud. Its doors opened, and fire followed. The memory began to shake. Screams, crystals shattering, the scent of burning trees. Jason gripped his head as pain rushed through him. "I can't." Breath. Alari grabbed his hands. "Breathe through me. I'm here." The vision shifted again, back to the forest. The real one. Jason fell to his knees, heart pounding. That was... He couldn't finish. Too much. He nodded. Alari knelt beside him. "That is why our bond must grow slowly. Memory is not always kind." Jason looked at her, his voice hoarse. "You went through all that, and still believe in peace." She gave a soft smile. "Because if I don't, then I become what they were." The next day, the Guardian reappeared. Jason and Alari stood before it, hand in hand. The crystal between them now glowed with two lights, one golden, one silver. The Guardian spoke, not with words, but into their minds. "The bond is strong. Two hearts now carry one vow." Jason looked at Alari, then back at the Guardian. "What do we do with this bond? You defend, you heal, you remember." Alari stepped forward. "Are there more of my people?" The Guardian's light pulsed slowly. "One, hidden, waiting, deep in the southern cliffs." Jason's heart jumped. Someone survived. Alari's eyes filled with tears. "Then, we are not alone." Jason turned to her. "We'll find them. Together." But the Guardian gave one final warning. "The Skyburners are not finished. A greater shadow is coming, one that feeds on forgotten stars." Jason's voice was tight. "What does that mean?" The Guardian's light faded. "You must go to the cliffs, and you must not be late." As they prepared for their journey, Jason looked down at the flower he had once picked. It had dried now, but it still glowed faintly. He smiled. Alari came beside him, holding a second flower, fresh, bright, and alive. "A bond must be nourished," she said, "like a garden, or a promise." Jason took it from her gently. No words were needed. The flower had already said everything. The fight for Ilara. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Jason Cole adjusted the straps of his gear bag and looked back at Alari. Her silver eyes were focused on the horizon, where the southern cliffs rose like broken fingers from the glowing trees. They had traveled for 2 days. No paths, no signals, only the direction whispered by the Guardian. "Go south. Find the last." Now they stood on the edge of something ancient and dangerous. Jason placed his hand on the crystal necklace around his neck. It pulsed gently, in time with his heartbeat, and with hers. Their bond had grown stronger with each step. He could feel her thoughts, her worry, her hope. She didn't speak much, but he didn't need her to. Her presence said everything. "I feel something," Jason said quietly. "Ahead. Like movement." Alari nodded. The Guardian was right. Something is waiting. They climbed the cliffs slowly. The rocks were warm, glowing faintly in the setting light. Below them, Ilara's forest stretched endlessly, painted in purples, golds, and soft green mist. It was beautiful. But Jason could feel the weight in the air. A storm was coming. Not of wind or rain, but of history, of things left unsaid. At the top of the cliffs, they found the entrance, an old gate carved into the stone, marked with symbols like the ones Jason had seen in the ruins. Alari touched the gate gently. "This is a vault, only opened by those who carry the vow." Jason stepped forward, holding the flower she had given him. The gate responded. It slid open with a deep, slow sound. Dust lifted into the air like memory waking from sleep. Behind it was darkness. And in the darkness, a voice. "You shouldn't have come." Jason's heart jumped. The voice was not human, but it was clear and heavy with sadness. A figure stepped into the faint light. Tall, glowing faintly like Alari, but older. His eyes were dim, his skin scarred. He held a long staff of crystal, and behind him, the room shimmered with strange machines and floating lights. Alari gasped, "Brother." The figure paused. Then his voice softened. "Alari, you're alive." She ran forward, tears in her eyes, and embraced him. Jason stepped back, giving them space. This was her brother, the one she had thought dead. Sold for a credit, forgotten by the stars. But the reunion didn't last long. "I stayed hidden," her brother said, eyes hard. "Because I knew they would return. I watched the stars. I listened to their signals. And now—" Jason stepped closer. "Now what?" The brother looked at him. "Now the real threat comes, not just raiders. Something worse." He turned and pointed to a glowing wall filled with patterns. The sky burners were just the beginning. They serve a greater force. Machines built to erase lost worlds. They feed on memory, on culture, on story. Jason felt a chill run through him. Alari's voice shook. "Why didn't you try to stop them?" Her brother's face twisted with pain. "Because I was afraid. I thought we were already gone, that our history was ash." Jason stepped forward. "It's not. She survived. The Guardian still lives, and now you're not alone." But her brother shook his head. "You don't understand. The destroyers, they are already here." Outside, the sky cracked open. A hole appeared in the clouds. Dark shapes moved inside it, ships larger than cities, machines without faces, glowing like dying stars. Jason's scanner screamed. "Warning. Hostile life forms. Number: unknown. Threat level: extreme." He looked at Alari. "We have to fight." Her brother stepped forward. "You can't win. Not with weapons." Jason narrowed his eyes. "Then how?" "With the bond." Back inside the vault, Alari and Jason stood at the center of a wide circle. Her brother placed his staff between them. It glowed brightly, rising into the air. Symbols around them began to light up. "You two are connected," he said. "Heart to heart, memory to memory. That bond can awaken Ilara's true defense, if you both are willing." Jason looked at Alari. "What happens if we fail?" "Then we vanish, like all the others." Jason took Alari's hands. Her skin was warm, her light steady. He closed his eyes. Their minds connected instantly. He saw her entire life. Her laughter, her pain, her quiet moments under moonlight. She saw his too, his lonely childhood, his dreams of finding something more. And together, they became something new. The vault shook. A bright column of light rose from the ground and burst into the sky. Far above, the machines paused. Inside the cliff, the crystal in Jason's necklace shattered, then reformed around his chest like armor. Alari's light grew stronger. Her hair lifted like wind made of light. Together, they rose. They weren't just bonded anymore. They were Ilara's voice, its memory, its soul. They stood at the cliff's edge as the machines began their descent. The ground cracked. But Ilara fought back. The trees lifted their roots like arms. The rivers changed course to block the machine's path. And from the old ruins, the Guardian rose again, bigger, brighter, filled with the energy of the vow. Jason and Alari stood hand in hand, glowing like twin stars. And then, without speaking, they walked toward the war. They didn't know if they would survive. But they knew what they were fighting for. Not just a planet. Not just each other. But for everything that had ever mattered. Memory. Connection. and the promise made with a single flower. The meaning of flowers. The sky above Ilara turned red, not with the soft glow of sunset, but with the fire of war. Massive shadow ships filled the air, their bodies shaped like dark mountains with glowing blue cracks. They didn't roar or scream. They moved silently, like death creeping across a sleeping world. Jason, Cole, and Ellery stood at the edge of the cliffs, glowing with the power of the vow that now connected them. Around them, the air shimmered with ancient energy. Their hands were locked together. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Their thoughts were one. Below, the forest was fighting back. Trees shifted, roots struck like whips, and the rivers flooded to slow the enemy machines. The Guardian stood tall in the clearing, arms wide like a shield, its light bright enough to push back darkness. But the destroyers were endless. They kept coming, slow, cold, emotionless. They weren't here to steal. They were here to erase. Jason turned to Ellery. This bond, how far can it reach? She closed her eyes. If our hearts stay open, farther than stars. Her brother stepped forward from the vault, placing the glowing staff in Jason's hand. You are no longer just a visitor. You carry Ilara's last voice. The bond between you is our only hope. Jason looked down at the staff, then up at the sky. Then it's time to speak loud. As the first wave of machines reached the cliffs, Jason stepped forward. He raised the staff. The vow inside him flared to life. The crystal on his chest cracked and spread, transforming into radiant armor that wrapped around his body like woven light. Beside him, Ellery rose into the air. Her hair flowed like silver fire. The crystal between her collarbones burned brighter than the moon's. She placed her hand over his heart once more and whispered, "Let them see who we are." The sky exploded. A beam of pure white light erupted from the cliffs, shooting upward like a signal to the stars. The destroyers paused. They began scanning the signal, searching for weakness. But instead, they found memory. The bond between Jason and Ellery had awakened something even older than the Guardian. Ilara's core memory, a living archive of everything the planet had ever seen, felt, and known. It came pouring out like a storm. Dreams, traditions, laughter, sorrow, songs, stories. The machines tried to block it. They failed. Because memory, when given freely, becomes truth. And truth can't be erased. Jason screamed, not in pain, but in release. He felt every emotion Ellery had buried for years. The loss of her people, the fear of silence, the ache of loneliness. And she felt his, the boy who never belonged, the man who searched the stars for something real, the explorer who gave a flower without knowing it was a promise. They held each other in the air, floating above the cliff. And the world held them back. Illara wasn't done living. The destroyers cracked first. Their hulls began to shimmer, confused by the flood of memory. Their systems weren't made for emotion. Their code rejected love, fear, joy. They couldn't handle the bond. And one by one, they fell, burning, crashing, vanishing. But the last one, bigger than the rest, older, descended slowly. It hovered just above Jason and Ellery. A voice filled their minds. "Why do you resist?" it asked. "You are small, forgotten. Your time has ended." Jason raised the flower Ellery had given him. It had survived every battle, every journey, every moment. He held it up. "I gave this without knowing what it meant," he said. "But now I do." He looked at Ellery, then back at the machine. "It means I see her, I choose her, I remember her people, I honor them." The machine hesitated. Jason stepped closer. "You think the stars belong to silence. But you're wrong. They belong to story, to feeling, to connection." He placed the flower on the staff, and it bloomed. Right there, in front of the destroyer, a new flower grew. One made of light and vow. Larry added her touch. The flower pulsed once, then exploded into light. The destroyer shattered. Silence returned. A warm wind swept across the cliffs. The skies cleared. And Ilara breathed. Jason collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Larry fell beside him, her light dim but steady. They looked at each other. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Jason reached out and brushed one away. "You're safe," he whispered. "We're safe," she replied. They didn't move for a long time, just held each other, beneath a sky now full of stars and possibility. In the days that followed, the forest began to heal. New flowers bloomed. The guardian returned to its resting place. Larry's brother began recording stories again, stories he thought were lost. And Jason stayed, not as an explorer, not as a guest, but as someone who belonged. He and Larry built a new home near the cliffs. Together, they planted the first garden. Each flower told a part of the story. Each petal was a promise. And at the center of the garden, they placed one dried, glowing flower. The first, the one he gave her without knowing. The one that started everything. Jason once came to Ilara looking for answers, but he left behind something more powerful. A vow, a connection, a reason for the stars to remember a world that nearly disappeared.